This special is a presentation of Sinclair Cares. Thank you for joining us for the Sinclair Cares Summer Hunger Relief Special. I'm Angela Brown from the National Desk. When kids are fed, they are fueled to thrive, but summer can be challenging for almost 22 million children who rely on their schools for meals. Many of those children are at risk of hunger when school is out for up to 3 months. That's why Sinclair Broadcast Group is partnering with Feeding America for Sinclair Cares Summer Hunger Relief is a fundraising campaign to help provide meals to children and families across the U.S. with a goal of helping to donate 1 million meals this summer. Let's begin in Oregon, where a local food bank is working to bridge the gap for families during the summer months. Right, Gazaway with our station in Portland shares more on their important efforts.
Step inside the Oregon Food Bank anytime, and you'll see workers and volunteers hard at work, sorting food donations and getting them ready to head out the door. Natalie Kaya now works there after using the food bank's life-saving resources to feed herself and her 4 kids.
Living that experience of knowing how overwhelming it can be to be unsure about what kind of food or what food I'm going to be able to feed my kids with really drives me with what I do every single day for Oregon Food Bank.
This warehouse is where it all happens. Workers and volunteers sort through hundreds of thousands of pounds of food every day. They send that food out to 1,400 sites across 2 states. Those sites just last year saw almost 2 million visits.
We need support year-round.
Morgan Dewey is a spokesperson for the Oregon Food Bank. She says their services are perhaps most important in the next few months.
Summer is actually a landmark time when families are experiencing really high risk of hunger, and that's especially because kids aren't getting meals in schools. So that means that for every kid in a household, families are having to provide almost up to 10 extra meals a week for their kiddos because they're not getting them in schools.
That's why the efforts here and every donation makes such a difference. The Oregon Food Bank led the charge in a $17 million expansion for free breakfast and lunch for students at as many as 200 schools. The state legislature paid for that. It starts next school year. The nonprofit also advocated for the summer EBT program. Families that already receive SNAP benefits will get an additional $40 per month from June to August for each eligible child. The food bank says it will help almost 300,000 children and families.
The reason why this is a particularly great program is because those dollars go right onto the cards, and then families can go to grocery stores and buy whatever food feels like home.
Despite the progress, Morgan says the fight against hunger is far from over. That's why they're also accepting monetary donations from anyone to keep making a difference in the lives of so many children and families.
When kids can go into a classroom and focus on teachers and focus on building strong, beautiful relationships with their classmates, instead of wondering where their next meal is going to come from, or instead of feeling stressed about having to help their families provide meals for them and their siblings, the results are phenomenal.
Natalie knows just how much a lifeline these donations are.
Everyone deserves food, and there shouldn't be shame in needing access to resources.
That's why you can find her at the Oregon Food Bank, stepping in to fight hunger. I'm Right Gazaway reporting.
I'm joined now by Claire Fontenot, the CEO of Feeding America. Claire, thank you so much for being here. First of all, let's just talk about the impact of food insecurity right here in the U.S.
Yeah. Your audience will probably be surprised to learn that every single county in the whole United States has people who have, as a barrier to thriving, food insecurity. In fact, in 2022, which is the last USDA numbers on food insecurity, the rates are higher than they've been since the financial downturn of 2008, 2009. So right now, that means 1 in 7 people in this country are food insecure. When it comes to kids, that's 1 in 5, a staggering number.
And it has an impact. Talk about that, whether it's on learning, attention.
Absolutely. So getting access to nutritious food impacts everything that we want for our kids. It impacts their ability to learn. It impacts their health. It impacts their emotional and mental well-being, their ability to relate to other children. So as we think about ways to invest in our future, investing in making certain that kids have enough to eat is one of the principal ways that we can do that.
And you talk about what your organization does. You said 5 billion meals a year. That's year round, right? It's helping
That's
so many families. What about during the summertime when school is out?
during the summer, it gets to be particularly challenging for kids. Um, Children in this country, about 22 million children rely upon school meal programs in order to round out a healthy diet. During the summer, those meal programs go away. So their ability to rely on that nutrition then can go away too, but for work like the work that we're doing with Sinclair, where communities across the country can participate in making sure that those gaps get filled for children during the summer months.
And let's talk about this campaign, Summer Hunger Relief. You just mentioned it that you're doing here with Sinclair Cares. Tell us more about it in terms of the goal here, which is very ambitious.
Yeah, it's ambitious and it's attainable. 1 million meals. And what's so beautiful about the way that this partnership is working is that when people invest in this work, they're investing in the communities that they care the most about. This money will go directly into their local communities. So wherever it is that you live, whatever community is that you care about, participating in this initiative gives you a chance to support those communities thriving.
And it sounds like you can do a lot with the cost of maybe a cup of coffee, even less.
Oh, that's absolutely right. So roughly $1 is roughly 10 meals. Now think about how hard it would be to make that happen in our daily budgets. But because of our scale, because of our efficiencies, our network, we're able to deliver so much on those contributions that get made. And that's why we need all of your audience to find a way to help, be it $1 or 10 or whatever it is that they're able to do. It'll make an impact.
People are always concerned. They ask, does their money stay in their own community? So if you give like maybe $20, kind of map out for me how that money would make it to a local food bank.
Yeah, so with this effort, we're actually going to be tracking by zip code. So if you give $20, those $20 are going to the community that you care the most about. Again, the Feeding America network is so vast that we actually cover every single county and parish all across the country and in Puerto Rico. So you give back in your own backyard by investing in this work. You help children that are the children of your neighbors, the kids that your kids are going to school with, by participating in this effort.
I think people sometimes lose sight of how these meals, how this will help kids, not only during the summer, but even when they go back to school as well.
Yes. So the Feeding America network doesn't turn on or off during a particular season because we know that there are children out there and there are people out there who face food insecurity year round. We are there for them when they need us. And so, as I said, that's a year-round effort. So even outside of the summer months, when you look at food insecurity rates being at 13.5%, 1 in 7 people in the country. For children, 18.5%. That's 13 million kids. If you look out at a playground and you see 5 kids playing, it is highly probable that one of them, at least one of them, is food insecure. And that's a year-round challenge. So Feeding America is in your community, shoulder to shoulder with you, helping to make sure that kids get what they need all the time.
You talk about,
especially during the summer.
You're right. You talk about the strain. I remember during the pandemic, so many people started to use food pantries just to get by. And then, of course, now you have inflation, the high cost of food. Are you still seeing that influx of people who need help?
We are. In fact, demand is higher than it was during the peak of the pandemic. And the resources, some of those resources that were provided during the pandemic have in fact gone away. So we have less access to food and greater demand today than we did even in 2020, making this kind of work so critically important to making certain that those kids all across the country get the nutrition that they need.
Now, you talk about some of that funding. We all know COVID funding running out. What do you need from lawmakers right now?
We need them to continue to do what we've seen them do uniquely well when it comes to hunger. This is not a partisan issue at its core. Everybody benefits when everyone get access to the food that they need to thrive. So we ask politicians to put aside parties, put aside the things that they don't agree with, to agree on this and make sure that all of our kids get the food that they need. Now, I'm pleased that that often happens. We've had so much bipartisan support throughout the pandemic. I'm hopeful that as the general public and Congress comes to understand that the crisis is not over, that people continue to need support, that they're going to stand up and they're going to help again.
And very quickly, could you leave us with one final message to motivate people to give for the Summer Hunger Relief Campaign?
So first, let me say thank you. All across the country, especially during the pandemic, people stepped up and really helped to make certain that their neighbors had what they needed to thrive. The problem is the crisis isn't over. We need you to step up and to continue to step up. Hunger is, in fact, something that we can solve for in this country, and we need your help to make that happen, especially for our kids and especially during the summer.
And thank you so much, Claire, for all you do and for Feeding America, helping families across this country.
My pleasure.
I'm joined now by Cindy Long. She's the administrator of the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. Cindy, we appreciate your time so much today. First, Cindy, can you put into perspective how important, school meals are for millions of children, and also what happens during the summer months?
Yeah, absolutely. And Angela, thanks so much for having me here. On an average day, about 30 million children receive a school lunch, and a significant number of them receive school breakfast too. And they, so for many kids, they're getting the majority of their intake at school on school days. But then in the summertime, what happens when those meals go away is that families are often faced with a real challenge as to how they're going to fill the nutrition gap during the summertime.
What is your role, the USDA's role, when it comes to these lunches, these school meals?
Yeah, well, the USDA's Food and Nutrition Service is responsible for operating all of the nutrition assistance programs in the United States. So that includes the school meals program, school lunch and school breakfast. We have similar programs for childcare. And very importantly, we also operate a summer feeding program that we're very pleased to share has been expanded and will be able to serve more kids.
And that is a perfect segue, because summer can be rough for so many parents, especially if the school meals go away. Tell us about some of these summer nutrition programs recently launched.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have what we're calling a new suite of programs, the summer nutrition programs, or SUN programs. And we now have 3 different ways to fight that potential summer hunger gap that can occur. We have our traditional program where children can come together in group settings and providers can get them meals if they're attending things like summer educational programs or recreation programs at the local Y or community center or local church. We've had that program for a long time. We're calling it the Sun Meals program, and it's a wonderful program where it works, but it's only historically been able to reach about 1 in 6 kids. Now, starting last summer, we were able to expand that program and add a Sun Meals to Go component for rural areas. And what that did is it allowed rural area providers to deliver meals to families or to set up pickup spots where families could get multiple meals, understanding that in rural areas, transportation and getting kids to a site every day is just not feasible. And the third piece of the Sun suite of programs, which we're super excited about, is kicking off this summer. And it's called the Sun Bucks program. And that's a program where every family who has a child receiving that is eligible for free or reduced price school meals will get a grocery card with $120 worth of grocery benefits per child that they can use to help make up for those meals at home, the meals that kids aren't getting because school is out.
When you talk about eligibility, can you kind of nail it down for us exactly who is eligible? Are we talking SNAP? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's really simple. Any child who's eligible for a free reduced price meal during the school year is eligible for the SUN programs. Now, one of the great things about the way the SUN Bucks program is structured is that many kids, those who are on SNAP or in many cases Medicaid or other means tested programs, they can automatically get these grocery cards without having to do anything. Now, there's another set of kids whose families will have to fill out a simple application that their state will make available. And those are the families who aren't participating in other programs like SNAP. But either way, the program is designed to be very simple to access.
You know, when you think about these programs and the possibility of so many kids going without food, it really makes a difference. How significant are these programs overall for so many families across the country?
Well, as I said before, 30 million kids eat school meals on a daily basis. So receiving those meals at school is really woven into the fiber of how a lot of families meet their family's nutrition needs. And as I said, we have had this wonderful program in the past where kids come together, but it's not historically been able to reach all the kids who receive meals during the school year. And now with this wider set of options, SUN Meals to Go, and SUN Bucks, we are very confident that we're going to be able to reach many more kids. In fact, this coming summer, which is the first year of the SUN Bucks program, we expect to reach 21 million kids in the states that are operating the program.
That is so many kids across the country. You know, you talk about the importance of getting a meal during summer, but this also makes a difference for kids when you think about it when they go back to school, making them, tell me about that.
Yeah, well, if you talk to anyone who works in education, whether it's teachers or school nurses, they will talk about the summer slump, right? Mm-hmm. When kids come back to school and they've kind of lost a step from where they were at the end of the school year. And, we firmly believe that good nutrition is a key part of the toolbox to fighting that summer slump. So kids who are going to continue to have a source to get nutritious, consistent meals over the course of the summer are absolutely going to come back to school better prepared to pick up where they left off and keep learning.
You know, you talk about the overall attention paid to this issue. I mean, you think of the number of kids, you said 30 million. That's a staggering amount of kids. Do you think enough focus is actually put on this issue when it comes to enough kids, providing kids with meals, whether it's during the school year or during the summer?
I think a lot of folks are familiar with school meals because it's something that's been around for a long time. What I don't think they understand fully is just how many families do rely on those as a critical part of their way of feeding their kids. As we talked about before, a lot of kids get lunch and breakfast at school 5 days a week. And I don't know that the public appreciates how extensively folks rely on that and what additional pressure it puts on a family's budget in the summertime when suddenly they're faced with the possibility of having to make up for those meals on their own. And therefore, these programs are so important for filling that gap.
Well, what more do you think needs to be done, can be done?
Well, I think the first thing we can do right now is to inform people about the availability of this fantastic set of programs. As I mentioned, the SUN Bucks program is new this year. And so we need to make sure that people understand what it is. Folks who get the card in the mail will need to understand that it's something they're entitled to, they're supposed to use. We need to help folks understand where to apply. And also we need to help folks know that there are also meals available in their community, either for meals to go in rural areas or meals that their kids can participate in at meal sites. So I think right now the focus is on making sure folks know the tools they have to help support their families in the summer.
And really the final question here, what is your message about the most important steps to take right now to address food insecurity?
Well, again, talking about the summer, I'll start with one thing that families can do, which is to go to our website, fns.usda.gov/summer. And that will provide a lot of information for families about all the 3 of the programs under the SUN program banner. So that's a great place to start for the summertime. Speaking more broadly, I think that it's just important to continue to raise the profile of these programs and the need that they fill in this in the United States. I do believe that's not fully understood. And, under the Biden administration, USDA is doing everything we can to support, expand, and lift up the value and importance of these programs so that every American understands what an important role they play in helping support families in the United States.
Well, thank you so much, Administrator Long, for sharing this information today.
And thanks so much for having me.
You can make a difference right now. Every dollar donated helps provide at least 10 meals at a local food bank. Your generosity will help children and their families stay nourished and healthy throughout the summer. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for joining us for the Sinclair Cares Summer Hunger Relief Special. Nearly 22 million children count on school meal programs, yet fewer than 17% have access to summer meal programs, which means this summer, millions of kids may worry about when they will receive their next meal. In Florida, the Treasure Coast Food Bank is working to address this need. Alexis Cruz with our station in West Palm Beach has more information.
We're at the Treasure Coast Food Bank, where they serve up to 250,000 people a week. This food bank has dozens of programs for people in need, and it starts right here in this huge warehouse. Let's show you around.
Good morning, welcome to the food bank. You can pull up by that young man over there.
For some families here on Florida's Treasure Coast, these boxes of food are the only reason they are able to put dinner on the table.
Unfortunately, the need has grown, and we try to respond to that growing need and really just help as many people as possible.
Krista Garafola has been with the Treasure Coast Food Bank for 14 years. The mission means everything to her, and a small army of volunteers make it all work.
We had about 10,000 volunteers come through our doors last year. They contributed about 45,000 hours, and that's the equivalent of about 20 full-time employees.
It definitely gives me purpose.
Catherine DeAndrea was a nurse for many years until she could no longer keep it up. Volunteering at the food bank gives her another chance to help others.
It does a lot of things. It gets me out of the house, gives me purpose, and I'm helping people. And I believe that the organization is doing something that I would 100% support.
From their production kitchen making thousands of meals to food pantry distribution covering 4 counties, the Treasure Coast Food Bank has something for every person in need and everyone who wants to lend a hand, like 8-year-old Levi.
Well, I am just getting some food, and then we'll go to the food pantry because we're trying to help our community.
Levi came today with his grandparents to pick up food for their church, one of the more than 300 community organizations the food bank supports each year. And Krista says they're always looking for new partners to support the mission so they can do more to help their neighbors in need.
Some of them might be retail stores that donate food that goes out into the community. Some of them might be sponsoring events or providing us grants for programs. We've seen about a 34% increase in need over pre-pandemic levels. So we're still needing to buy more food, and that costs money.
And that's a message we've heard from all of our local nonprofits fighting hunger across South Florida. Cash goes a long way because they were able to buy food directly from suppliers for a fraction of what you and I pay at the store.
Volunteers we spoke with say if you can't donate your money, your time is just as valuable. In Fort Pierce, for Sinclair Cares, I'm Alexis Cruz.
Let's hear more about the impact of food insecurity in Maryland. Carmen Del Guecho is the CEO of the Maryland Food Bank, and Jenny Murphy is a parent who has experienced food insecurity. Now, thank you both so much for joining me today. Let's start with Carmen right here. I've been reading so much about the Maryland Food Bank. Your organization essentially is a pipeline for so many other organizations that you served, from soup kitchens to so many groups. Just tell me about the organizations that you help.
Yeah, at the Maryland Food Bank, we cover the entire state, save a couple counties outside the greater Washington area. And our job is to provide as much food as we possibly can, over 41 million meals last year, to these local community-based organizations, over 350 of them that we work with every day. And these folks are really the ones embedded in communities, establishing relationship with local neighbors, being readily available to local neighbors, understanding the needs of local neighbors in ways that we couldn't really do from a central location. So critical to our mission, and we have over 350 of them who do great work, and they come in all shapes and sizes.
And you're right, and many of the people, you know, coming through those doors, average working Americans.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. And I think COVID really kind of elevated the awareness around food insecurity in our country. In Maryland, we have 1 in 3 Marylanders who are struggling to make ends meet. And these are folks who are, many of which are working families. And Jenny will tell you some of her stories later on here today. I mean, they're just, because of inflation, because Maryland in and of itself is a little more of an expensive state vis-a-vis the rest of the country, there are more and more people who are struggling to get food on the table. And so we're having to respond to that need in ways that, you know, post-COVID continue to be significant.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Jenny. Let's go to Jenny right now to talk about this, because you've actually used one of these food banks. Just tell me about yourself. You're a working mom. Tell me about your situation.
I have 2 daughters, a 23-year-old and a 6-year-old. And I've had to use the food pantries, like blessing boxes and the actual traditional food bank in my local area.
Do you think there's a stigma attached to using food banks? What should people know?
Yeah, just like Carmen was saying, like the working person, you know, somebody who's working, making, you know, decent money, they're still hungry sometimes.
And what about during the summer? Did it get rougher as a mom during the summer?
Yeah, very rough. And we're fortunate in our area that we have the ability to take them to the school for breakfast and lunch.
Tell me the impact of school being out and kids maybe not getting that one meal.
Yeah, significant. I mean, I think, again, that's something that I think many folks take for granted in terms of the role schools play, not only educating our children, but also providing access to nutritious food. And so when kids are out of school, that has to be supplemented and replaced by some way, shape, or form. And that puts a lot of pressure on mothers like Jenny to figure out ways in which they now are adding that cost to their budget at a time when food costs are significantly higher. And so we, as a food bank, try to find a variety of ways to reach more families during the summer. We have a summer feeding program where we actually prepare meals here in our facility and distribute them to the various locations all across central Maryland to make sure that students who are participating in summer programs have access to nutritious food for breakfast and lunch. So a lot of strain on families over the course of the summer. And again, this is more exacerbated this year in particular because of the fact that the effect of inflation food costs have just been so high.
Now, Jenny, can you describe for us, because I think a lot of people, when they hear the term food security, I don't know if it paints a really accurate picture of what so many families are facing. For your family, what did food insecurity look like?
For us, it meant that sometimes we would have to buy the cheaper, you know, less healthier food items from the store and having like 1 or 2 meals compared to 3 per day.
What did you do during the summer?
During the summer, I would take my daughter to the local school, elementary school, and she would have her breakfast and lunch, and, you know, just we put together something for dinner.
You know, you talk about having to cut back and cut corners, but also having to stretch meals, and sometimes did your family maybe not have the meals?
Yeah, there's a lot of times that, you know, like I said, we would only have like 1 or 2 meals, or we would have to stretch something over 2 days that should have been only for 1 day.
Now, when it comes to the Maryland Food Bank, Carmen, any special programs this year? What are you seeing this year that may make it different possibly than any other years when it comes to families in need?
Yeah, I think, you know, we're trying to find more and more ways to reach deeper and deeper in communities. So we have different programmatic response in terms of in terms of reaching into more rural communities if need be. We are highly focused on increasing the nutritional content of the food we distribute. We're distributing more nutritious food now than probably any time in our 45-year history. That adds cost to our structure because buying healthy beans and produce often is more expensive than providing macaroni and cheese and those type of solutions. So we're committed to doing that and continue to try to do that. And then the other things we're trying to do now is begin to try and address root cause, right? Root causes of hunger. And this is something that other food banks are doing as well, because we know that our ability to continue to push out food day in and day out may not solving a long-term problem.
Right.
And so we in particular, and I think other food banks are doing similar things to try to begin to address root causes. And again, a lot of that's focused on trying to create financial security, whether it's job training or supporting job training programs and a variety of other ways. So trying to do it both in more access to nutritious food during different types of programs, while also addressing root causes with providing more options to folks to help improve their situation.
And you know, also obviously people giving and donating is also a big help. Jenny, what do you want people to know about people who may be facing hunger? What do you think they should know? Because many people don't understand it or have never been in that situation, may have never visited a food pantry. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that it could be them. There's, you know, people live paycheck to paycheck, and any given moment you could be, you know, food insecure, and especially for children or as an adult, if you're hungry, you can't apply for that job or focus on school or fill out the job application or, you know, even go to work because you're hungry, you can't focus.
How did it make a difference in your life, for you and your family, when you did visit these food banks?
We were able to have food.
Bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
Carmen, what about people who are watching this right now? How can they support the Maryland Food Bank, or really a food bank in their community?
Yeah, I mean, there's a variety of ways. I mean, there's so many different on-ramps here, really. So financial support obviously is critical. As I mentioned earlier, we're buying more food than we ever have, $25 million worth a year. That's something we're going to have to continue to do to respond to the need as well as our nutrition. So, and but 25 million gives us a lot of buying power. So financial support goes a long way. Your dollar donated to a food bank could go a lot further than would be you going to your local retailer and donating the food directly. And then the other way is volunteerism. We have tremendous need here in our organization. We have over 35,000 hours of volunteer work that's helps us achieve our mission. And then we're also providing opportunities for volunteers to get involved in with their local food pantries, so that they can, if they prefer to stay kind of close to home, if you will, and serving people in their local communities, they have options to do that as well. So financial support as well as your time is very valuable to any food bank.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this valuable information, both Carmen and Jenny. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So what can be done to address the issue from a big picture standpoint? I'm joined now by Vince Hall. He's the Chief Government Relations Officer for Feeding America. Thank you so much for being here, Vince.
Thank you so much for having me.
First, kind of paint a picture for me when it comes to how Feeding America works with the federal government.
Yeah, it's a great question, because Feeding America is really about community-based food banks, and there are 200 partner food banks that cover the entire United States and Puerto Rico. They become members of the Feeding America network, and that Feeding America national organization has advocacy teams in state capitals, but has advocacy right here in Washington, D.C. So I'm privileged and honored to lead the Washington, D.C. advocacy team. We're working with Congress, we're working with USDA, we're working with the White House to try to educate policymakers about the reality of hunger on the ground.
And to talk about that reality, you know that firsthand. You worked as a local food banker in San Diego,
yes.
And now you're here in D.C., taking all that local knowledge and bringing it to the federal government. What do you think they need to know about hunger on the ground?
It's stunning to me how many people in the ecosystem of Washington, and the Beltway they call it, don't really understand the reality of hunger on the ground the way that food bankers do. And I was privileged to lead Feeding San Diego, one of our 200 food banks. I was at food distributions every week, and I heard the stories of people who were coming in need of help, many of whom frankly felt shame that they needed this assistance, but they have fallen on hard times. They had a major medical crisis in their family that drained their family's resources. The only income earner in the family was injured, and all of a sudden the income of the family has gone away. Or people are finding themselves in a situation where the money that they're making each month, even though they're working perhaps 2 full-time jobs, isn't enough to afford rent, food, gasoline, power, health, education, all the monthly budget equations. And so food, unfortunately, is often one of the first things that gets trimmed back as families are struggling to make it through each month.
Now, what policies are you looking at right now? Are you pushing for?
So this happens to be a moment where the Farm Bill, which only comes along once every 5 years, is being considered by Congress, and it authorizes 2 vitally important hunger programs. One is SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, what we used to call food stamps, and the other is TFAP, which stands for the Emergency Food Assistance Program. And these 2 programs work hand in hand. SNAP makes it possible for families who qualify to obtain groceries at a local grocery store. TFAP makes it possible for food banks to have a sustainable, reliable supply of food to complement the food that is donated to ensure that the nutritional needs of families that come to food distributions can be addressed.
Now, what about in the future? Any future bills coming down the pike, or things that you think think should be done or policies that should be promoted in order to help working families?
Well, thanks to Senator John Bozeman of Arkansas and Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan, this summer one of the first major new nutrition programs in 50 years is being implemented across the country, and it is called Sunbucks. And that program is going to give young people the opportunity to get the nutrition during the summer months that they rely on the school cafeteria to obtain during the school year. And it's tragic, but there are about 9 million children in the United States for whom the school cafeteria is their only reliable source of balanced and nutritious meals. And so when that school gate is locked for the summer, they're locked out of their only realistic opportunity for nutrition. This Sunbucks program is going to allow those families to be able to obtain at a grocery store the equivalent nutrition to what those kids were getting at the school cafeteria, so that when they come back to school in the fall, they're fit, they're nourished, they're ready to learn, and they're enthusiastic, instead of coming back to school in a state of emaciation and malnutrition and abject hunger, and seeking that first meal at the cafeteria with a gusto because they haven't had that opportunity all summer.
From a policy perspective, do you think there's a way truly to end food insecurity?
Absolutely. I mean, we throw away more food in the United States every day than is necessary to solve the problem of hunger. So this is a political choice to have hunger in our country. So it's not that a political choice is necessary to use a resource that's already here in abundance to solve a problem that's all around us. It's a political choice not to solve it. And so we're working with Congress, with members of both parties, with the White House in a completely nonpartisan fashion to just try to educate everybody about not only the solvability of this problem. We don't need 13 million children to go hungry in the wealthiest nation in the history of civilization. We need to have an educated and productive workforce, and hunger is just debilitating. So there's no economic benefit to it. There's no humanitarian benefit to it. And people who are nourished and ready to start their day can learn well in school, can do well in job training programs, can perform well in their current jobs and move up the ladder. Seniors can maintain the vitality and energy of their golden years. People who are struggling with illness can be on a pathway to recovery. So there's nothing but good outcomes from solving hunger.
Do you think, because you obviously work with lawmakers and you say this can be solved, is there a willingness by lawmakers, Congress, to get this solved?
There are people in both parties firmly committed to solving this problem, and unfortunately there are people who would rather spend money on other priorities, or actually, as you were alluding to earlier, engage in stereotypes about people who need hunger assistance, and use those stereotypes as a way to back away from a realistic commitment to ending hunger. But I really encourage lawmakers to come out to food banks and to come out to food distributions, to really be on the ground in their own districts to understand what's actually going on and to actually understand how available the solutions are if we exercise the political will.
You know, we talk about policy solutions, but here is one, not solution, but one at least way to help is through campaigns to, raise money or donations for food banks. Kind of like what we're doing, Feeding America, what we're partnered to do right here. How does programs, campaigns like this really make a difference when the policy isn't yet in place?
I can't underestimate how vitally important partnerships are, like the partnership between Feeding America and Sinclair. This is an amazing partnership to end hunger because it drives right at the heart of our needs, which is we need to have visibility on this problem. We need to educate the community about hunger. Look, we're all in community with somebody facing hunger, even if we don't know it. It's somebody in our faith community, it's somebody who lives down the street, it's the family of a child in our kid's classroom, it's somebody in our workplace. This is a pervasive problem, and we're in community with people facing hunger. So any opportunity to educate the public about that is vitally important, and obviously everything we do costs money. And so as we run trucks, as we expand warehouses, as we receive donated food, we typically have to pay to move that food to our warehouse. That all costs money, and so the financial support from ordinary Americans and, frankly, from big, wealthy, but also generous corporations makes all this work possible.
And this campaign rather ambitious. I think what is 1 million meals or something like that?
Very ambitious. And when you sit and watch a child eat a meal that wouldn't be possible but for a campaign like this, then you feel it, you understand it, and you are honored by the opportunity to give and to advance the mission.
Thank you so much, Vince, for your time and your work as well.
Thank you.
And you can help provide meals to families and children this summer. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. Every dollar donated helps provide at least 10 meals at local food banks. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Sinclair Cares Summer Hunger Relief. 1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and during the summer months when schools are out, kids go without a meal. Food banks often step in to provide food, and that's exactly what 3 Square Food Bank in Las Vegas is doing. LaToya Silman with our station in Las Vegas explains.
At Whitney Library, lunch arrives by the truckload.
You think of Las Vegas, you think about the glitz and the glamour, but a lot of people need help.
Like these seniors who can depend on a hot meal here every Friday. Grace P. Quincy says she looks forward to it.
I think it's a marvelous thing that people can take their time and energy and money to take care of the senior citizens.
But the help doesn't end here. 3 Square, a member of Feeding America, also provides meals for the youngest among us.
So when children are in school, they have access to meal programs that are provided by the school district. And so when they're home for the summer, families who may already be struggling with food insecurity may not have access to food all the time. So with increased costs of groceries and electricity bills over the summer that are skyrocketing, it is really hard for families to be able to afford groceries and to be able to provide food for their kids.
And these children can count on receiving a meal Monday through Friday this summer. But Billy Allen, the branch manager at Whitney Library, says they're filling up on more than food.
These kids look forward to these meals, on top of seeing the activities that we got going on. We got the teen zone.
Cool computer games and a bevy of books also keep everyone busy. Others like to treat themselves to a side of conversation.
I'll be 95 this month, and I really enjoy coming down here. We got a lot of camaraderie down here.
Moments made possible through the generosity of others, and it's not lost on those receiving that goodwill.
It's wonderful that people can do these things, and they'll get their reward up there.
I'm LaToya Silman in Las Vegas for Sinclair Cares.
I'm joined now by Feeding America's Director of Community Engagement, David Street. David, I appreciate you being here. First, let's talk about what is it going to take to reduce food insecurity, although I know you are aiming for much higher than that.
Absolutely. Well, at Feeding America, we do want to be aspirational. So when we think about what it takes to end food insecurity, we think it's 2 primary things. One, we want to leverage our community, the entrepreneurship, the innovation, the good works that are already happening, and see if we can't take it to a 2.0 level. So if our volunteers are already volunteering, how can we get them to take that next step to meet with a member of Congress? And then the second thing is around policy. We know that if we're going to end hunger and make a dent in it in our neighborhoods and our communities, it's really going to take policy efforts to do that.
When you talk about community engagement, what does it look like on the ground level? What does it look like in communities in terms of physically having something there for people to be able to access food so they can eradicate food insecurity?
Yeah, so from a food bank standpoint, it really looks like us being a good neighbor with the community partners that we already work with or want to work with. So one of the questions we ask ourselves is how can we go deeper? So if we're working with a church, if we're working with a civic association and they are distributing food, are there new ways that we can work with them to get over food barriers that we know exist? We know that everybody can't come to a food bank, so can these partners help facilitate door-to-door services? Can they open up their schools or their libraries for individuals who can't make it to the food bank? Maybe they can make it there to pick up the foods and resources that they need.
Are these programs that are a wish list or something that are maybe in the
No,
working phase?
They're not wish lists at all. You have a lot of food banks who are doing some of these things already. And so that's when we talk about the community engagement. You're at the front lines, and so you see these things, you hear these things, and then you start to implement them in your programming.
Now you talk about the community, and that's why you do what you do. You hear from people who are experiencing food insecurity. What are they telling you that they need in order to, consistently have meals, food?
The biggest theme that you hear a lot of times is around access. People want healthy foods. People want to be able to go in their neighborhood and actually be able to go to a supermarket and shop. And a lot of people still just don't have that. And so access is a theme that comes up time and time again. How do I get access to healthier foods? How can I get to places and locations that have a supermarket in a reasonable fashion if I don't have transportation? Those different types of things. And so access will be the primary driver. And then we also know that systemic issues around race, redlining, et cetera, have marginalize certain communities. And so when we think about ending hunger and engaging community, it's also about ending systemic barriers that have created some of these hardships for communities of color especially.
And some of those systemic barriers you're talking about?
Access for one. So we know that depending on your zip code, oftentimes determine if you have certain amenities, if you have a supermarket, if you have fresh foods and all. And so these are some of the things that I point to that have been with us for far too long. And so when we talk about the community engagement, that's where the policies and stuff come in, right? So it's more than just volunteering, it's more than just giving food, but we want long-term partners so we can eradicate some of these long-term issues.
Now, what are some of those policies you're talking about that could, you believe, make a difference?
Well, the good news is that you have a lot of organizations, Feeding America included, who've been advocating on things like around summer EBT, which is huge for us. You know that when students are not in school, they're become vulnerable when it comes to their food and their next meals. And so what happens in the summertime is essential. And so those are the policies that we point to. SNAP obviously is a very big one for our food banks. And those are the things that are going to leave a lasting impact.
Now, what are some of the things that Feeding America is doing, specifically? I mean, there's so many things. Tell us about it that you're doing for families in need.
Well, one of the things that we're doing is just good old-fashioned listening. So we don't want to come in and feel like we have all the solutions or all the answers. And our Elevating Voices Summit, we just listen to our neighbors, to listen to the issues that they say, hey, these are important to us. When we talk about transportation, when we talk about access, when we talk about work, those are things that we care about. When we talk about fresh foods and where can we get them from, these are the things that we care about. So Feeding America always comes in a posture where we want to listen first and then figure out what resources and tools do we have that can bring some solutions to bear.
You talk about the difference it makes when you don't have a healthy meal, when you go without a healthy meal. What does that look like for families on the ground, how it impacts whether it's schooling, especially when summer's out, they don't get the meal that they may have gotten in school, but then it can affect students when they go back to school if they spent the whole summer hungry. Now, what does that mean when you work with families who are going without, especially during the summer?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to put it in more perspective, you have 13 million young people, children, who are food insecure. And if you break that down, there's 28% of Latino, 20% of African American, almost 10% of white. We talk about food insecurity. Those numbers are unimaginable and they should not be tolerated. And so it's well documented some of the adverse effects that happen to anyone, let alone children, when they aren't nourished. And so those are the things that we know, and we say, all right, well, when it comes to our policy efforts, community engagements, we want to lean.
So we're doing this campaign to get people involved, maybe inspire people to give in some way. So what can people watching this, people in their community do to get involved, to help a food bank or even maybe Feeding America?
Yeah, there are three things that I point to. One is to volunteer. Go to your local food bank, bring a group, bring friends, and volunteer. Obviously, you can give. That goes a long way to helping our mission. And then the third thing is to get involved with us in our advocacy efforts as we work with policymakers to make sure that programs like SNAP, Summer EBT are funded and well maintained.
So putting pressure on lawmakers, huh?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us, David.
Thanks for having me.
And you can make a difference right now. Just scan the QR code on your screen or go to sinclaircares.com. Every dollar donated helps provide at least 10 meals at a local food bank. And that brings this Sinclair Cares Summer Hunger Relief Special to a close. Remember, every dollar counts. Please join us in this effort to end hunger in the country and provide hunger relief to many families this summer. I'm Angela Brown with the National Desk. Thank you so much for watching.